I'm sure my story isn't all that unusual, but I'm sharing it in the hopes that someone can learn from what I went through. My wife and I had been married for 12 years and together for 15 when things started to change. We had built a good life together, or so I thought. She began to grow distant and started saying that our marriage was likely over. She claimed to be on some kind of healing path, but I had no idea what that meant. While I threw myself into my work, hobbies, and spending time with family, she was spending more and more time away from home. She was helping a friend celebrate their sobriety, and I didn't think much of it at first. But things got progressively worse. My daughter and I were home alone more often, and my wife would frequently make comments like, "We've had such a great life together, what am I thinking?" Eventually, she stated she wasn't going to file for divorce until our daughter went off to college. I started to feel like I was living in limbo. I had no idea what was happening, but I was constantly trying to hold everything together, pretending everything was okay. After months of this emotional roller coaster, I couldn't take it any longer. I decided to read her emails and search through her phone. That's when I found evidence of an affair. I confronted her and, of course, I made the mistake of telling her what I found. She quickly spun a new set of lies. She downplayed everything, telling me that she had only kissed the guy once, that it was a mistake, and that they were just friends. I was devastated. It crushed me. Having been through this before with my first wife, I knew what I had to do. I demanded that she end all contact with this man, and we tried to reconcile over the weekend. For a brief time, things seemed to improve, but it wasn't long before her bitterness returned. She started encouraging me to work on my body, especially my chest. I found this odd because I already biked 20 miles every day and I was in great shape, but she kept mentioning how her lover had a big chest. Later, I realized just how much her lover's physique had been a point of obsession for her. The real shock came when I discovered explicit texts between my wife and her lover. I found them on an old phone she had upgraded. After a deep dive into her messages, I saw clear evidence of an affair. The man she was involved with was a drug addict, someone she met in AA. He was much shorter than me, poorly educated, bankrupt, and estranged from his family. I couldn't help but feel relieved that at least this confirmed it wasn't about me. It was about her personal issues. I confronted her once again. This time, I didn't hold back. I told her I already knew everything, and there was no point in her coming up with more lies. She had to tell me the full truth. That's when it all came out, the ugly details of her self-destructive behavior. I insisted she write everything down. I even went to confront her lover, meeting him at the hotel where he worked. I exposed the affair, which led to him being transferred to another location. I gave her a chance to reconcile, but in hindsight, I should have insisted that she move out for a while to give us both space to heal. What I didn't know was that my daughter had been reading my wife's emails. She knew everything about the affair. A couple of weeks later, my daughter got drunk, took some pills, and drove her car off the road. Thankfully, she didn't hurt herself or anyone else. But the car flipped and nearly landed in a creek. The consequences were severe. She received a DWI, was kicked out of the National Honor Society, and faced shame at school. It was too much for her to handle. My wife decided I had to deal with all of this because she couldn't. She couldn't face the fallout of her actions. Not long after, my wife had a breakdown. She screamed at our daughter, blaming her for everything that went wrong in her life. She even said things like, "You're the reason I want to get drunk. You're the reason I want to kill myself," and then stormed off. It was a horrifying scene, and it left our daughter deeply shaken. When my wife came back, she seemed remorseful, but she was still minimizing what she'd done. The real damage came after that. Our daughter, who had been angry with her mother, now started to take out all her anger on me. My wife, in her own warped way, began to manipulate our daughter into seeing me as the villain. She needed to protect her ego as an alcoholic, and if that meant emotionally abusing our daughter, then so be it. My wife encouraged our daughter to direct her anger at me, further complicating an already difficult situation. The emotional manipulation only deepened. I could see my wife starting to see herself as the real victim in all of this. She even began to stalk me on online support groups, looking for things to fuel new arguments. It was maddening. I made another mistake during this time by sharing my support systems with her. I had been seeking advice from online groups for people who had experienced infidelity, hoping to get help. But telling my wife about this only gave her more ammunition to continue her tirades. It was a predictable disaster. Things continued to fall apart. A year into our attempt at reconciliation, she erupted in a cruel, mocking rant, digging into my deepest vulnerabilities. She mocked me for things I'd shared with her in confidence over the years, exploiting my pain to make herself feel better. It was then that I realized something. If she was willing to destroy everything we had built, to exploit my deepest insecurities to get what she wanted, there was no coming back from this. I could never trust her again. At that moment, I knew I had to end the relationship. I could no longer stay with someone who was so manipulative, deceitful, and emotionally abusive. It was a difficult decision, but it was clear to me that she was beyond redemption. The divorce settlement was ugly. I ended up paying her $150,000 to keep the house I had already paid off and to keep my pension, which I had worked 12 years to build. Even though she worked and made a decent salary, I had always been the one to pay for everything. The bills, the mortgage, the car payment, and even groceries. I don't know where her money went, but I suspect it all went to her lover. The one silver lining in all of this was that the house appraisal came in much lower than expected, saving me from complete financial ruin. I was able to keep the house, a custom-built home with a recording studio, woodworking shop, and breathtaking views of the surrounding landscape. It's not huge, but it's the most peaceful place I've ever been, and it's mine. 4 years later, things have gotten much better. My daughter and I have rebuilt our relationship, though it's been a long and difficult road. She's about to graduate from a prestigious college in New York City, and she often tells me how much she appreciates that I never badmouthed her mother to her. It means a lot to her, especially since her mum still curses me and talks negatively about me to anyone who will listen. Now my ex refers to her affair as a cry for help and says I didn't understand her pain. She still claims the affair wasn't a big deal, that it was just a momentary lapse. In her mind, the affair was insignificant compared to the way our marriage ended. Hearing her make these claims through mutual friends brings me a sense of relief. I'm finally at peace. I now have an amazing girlfriend who is emotionally mature, and my daughter likes her too. Looking back, there are a lot of things I wish I'd done differently. I wish I'd demanded a post-nuptial agreement as a sign of commitment if we were to reconcile. I should have insisted she move out once I had proof of the affair, to give both of us time to clear our heads. But I'm also grateful for the lessons I learned. I'm glad I waited until I had 100% certainty before making a decision. Never badmouthed my wife around our daughter, found a support network, confronted her lover, and realized that none of this was my fault. It was all about her own brokenness. That's the end of this story. Leave your comments in the comment sections to tell us how you feel about this story. And I will see you in the next video.